At my mom's birthday party, she looked at me and toasted to the son who gives the most but matters the least, then called it a joke. So I said jokes are supposed to be funny. Tell me which part was. I'm 33 years old, and if you'd asked me a few years ago what kind of man I wanted to be, I would have said generous, supportive, someone the family could count on. I never imagined that trying to be that person would turn me into something else entirely. Someone invisible taken for granted, and eventually someone vengeful. My mother was turning 60 and the whole thing had been planned for months. A big rented venue catered food, live music, flowers, decorations, the works. You'd think it was a wedding. My sister Claire took the reins on organizing it, but only in name. In reality, most of the planning was outsourced to me as usual. Adam, can you just put the deposit down for now? You're better with the bakery than me. Can you just talk to them directly? Oh, and send the down payment for the band before Friday, please. It always started as just this one thing, and always ended with my bank account bleeding dry in the name of being a good son. I never complained out loud. Maybe I should have. But I guess I kept thinking that if I gave enough money time presents, they'd finally start to see me. Not as the divorced one, not as the guy who works too much. Not as the quiet one, just as part of the family. But that night shattered any illusions I still had. The party was set to start at 7 p.m. I showed up a little early carrying the cake myself. 2 tiers vanilla bean with raspberry filling handmade sugar flowers that matched Mom's favorite roses. I'd gone all out. It was the one part of the event I actually felt proud of. Walking in, I was barely through the door before I heard Claire's voice slice through the buzz of conversation like a sneer in stereo. "Oh, look," she said, not even trying to lower her voice. The family wallet finally showed up. There was laughter. Actual laughter. My Uncle Jeff, half drunk already with his second gin and tonic in hand, clinked his glass and added to the child who gives the most but matters the least. I froze. Cake box in my hands. Smile froze and mid-hello. My cheeks burned. I think I said something like, "Hey," but it came out quieter than I meant. I scanned the crowd. Nobody looked uncomfortable. No one stepped in. They were all just smiling like it was some inside joke they'd all been in on for years. Even Mom. She stood in her burgundy dress, pearls around her neck, a matching smile plastered across her face. "Don't make a scene," she said softly as I approached. "It's my day." That did something to me. Something I didn't expect. It was like watching a bridge you didn't know you were standing on burn down in real time. I didn't respond. I didn't even put the cake on the table. I walked straight past the decorations, past the overpriced photographer snapping candids of everyone else's joy, and made my way to the reception desk. The manager looked up. "Name?" she asked. I slid an envelope across the counter. "Adam Sterling. The balance for the venue's in here." She opened it and nodded, about to thank me, but I held up a hand. "Change of plans." I said, "That balance. I want it canceled. Every check inside that envelope. I need them returned to me immediately." Her eyebrows lifted. "Sir, the event is currently in progress." "I understand," I said. "But you haven't deposited anything yet, right?" "No," but then ripped them up. She hesitated, but something in my face must have made her realize I wasn't bluffing. "I'll talk to the owner," she said quickly. "He's here tonight. Wait here." I didn't. I turned around and walked out the front door without another word. I didn't go far, just across the street where my car was parked facing the entrance. I sat there for a while, engine off, just watching people dance through the tall windows, hearing the faint thump of the bass line trying to steady the shaking in my hands. Was it petty? Probably. Was it impulsive? Maybe, but was it deserved? I kept hearing Jeff's voice. Gives the most but matters the least. And then, like a slow wave, the implications started washing over me. The photographer, I paid for that. The caterer. I'd split the cost with Claire, except I paid her half too. The musicians. I'd been the one to sign the contract. The florist, the decorations, the champagne. They hadn't just mocked me. They built a monument to my generosity and stood on top of it to laugh in my face. It was around 8:15 when I noticed the venue lights flicker once, then again a third time, and then they went dark completely. Music cut out mid-verse. I saw silhouettes near the windows begin to fidget, shadows moving fast across the walls as people pulled out their phones, gesturing toward the ceiling and to each other. Someone must have gone to the DJ or the band or the coordinator, maybe to the staff, and then someone else must have asked to speak to the manager. The panic didn't happen all at once. It built slowly like heat under a sealed lid. The music didn't come back on. The power didn't reset. Waiters started pulling trays back into the kitchen, lights still off. One by one, guests began drifting toward the entrance, confused. My phone buzzed. First from Claire, then from Mom, then Jeff. Each message started the same way. Hey Adam, are you still here? We think there's a problem, or the venue says they didn't get the full payment, or this has to be a mistake, right? I didn't answer. Instead, I leaned back in my seat and just watched. People streamed out in clumps, some in heels, some barefoot from dancing, others carrying their coats or half-full glasses of drinks. The birthday girl came last, flanked by Jeff and Claire, arguing with the venue manager just inside the front doors. She was gesturing wildly, pointing back toward the dimmed reception room like it owed her something. My mother's voice, even from across the street, carried, "Where's my son? He's the one who handled this." I stayed in the car a while longer after they all spilled into the parking lot, pacing, arguing, staring at their phones like one of them held the magic button to rewind the night. Mom kept trying to call me. So did Claire. Eventually, they stopped calling and just started texting. Claire, what is going on? Adam? The venue said you canceled. Fix this now. Mom, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this was supposed to be my special night. Jeff, you better get your butt back here and explain yourself. I read every word. Didn't respond. At 9:27 p.m., I turned my phone off and drove home. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because something had shifted in me. It was like I'd finally opened a door I'd spent my whole life pretending didn't exist. A door labeled enough. The next morning, I woke up and started writing. Not texts, not emails, letters, real ones. I pulled out my checkbook and my calendar. I logged into every account I'd quietly used to support my family over the last several years and started listing them out. $1,200 monthly to Mom's rent. $400 monthly to Claire's son's daycare. $300 to Jeff's credit card debt. $250 to cover utilities at Mom's during winter. $8,000 for Claire's wedding dress 2 years ago. $15,000 loan to Jeff, he never paid back. All the deposits I'd put down for the party, even the ones I hadn't canceled in time. Then I tallied the total just north of $94,000. $94,000 over the last 6 years, quietly, without complaint, without acknowledgement. I don't make millions. I'm a systems analyst at a mid-size firm. I live modestly. No vacations, no luxury car. I rent instead of own. My life was lean because I have been supporting them. I printed out the list and made 3 copies. Then I drafted a formal letter. It wasn't spiteful or dramatic, just the truth. I explained that effective immediately, I would no longer be providing financial support to any member of the family. I wasn't angry, I wrote, but I was done. Done being taken for granted. Done being laughed at while funding the very things they celebrated. Done being the wallet. I folded the letters, attached a copy of the financial breakdown to each, and mailed them. One to Mom, one to Claire, one to Uncle Jeff, certified with receipts. And then, for the first time in a long time, I took myself out for breakfast, sat alone, ordered eggs, Benedict and fresh orange juice, tipped the waitress 40%. By the next day, my phone was back to buzzing. I turned it on that morning and watched the notifications roll in like waves. Claire texted, "Seriously, you're cutting off my daycare money over a joke." Mom texted, "How dare you humiliate me at my own birthday and then send a list like I'm some charity case." Jeff texted, "This is low even for you." Low I hadn't even started, because the second step of my plan wasn't just cutting off the money. It was exposing the ugly truth they all tried to keep under wraps. They depended on me. And without me, the scaffolding of their lives started to crack. Claire's daycare stopped accepting her late payments. She called in a panic 2 weeks later, begging me to just cover it until she figured something out. Jeff's landlord started sending final notices. I knew because I used to receive them on his behalf. And Mom finally had to face her landlord herself for the first time in years. Apparently, she told him I'd always pay by the 5th. When I didn't, she got the notice I used to intercept. But the moment that really brought it home, 2 weeks after the birthday party, I got a call from the venue manager. He said someone claiming to be my assistant had tried to rebook the party space using my name and discount code. The card declined. The name on it was Claire. They still thought I might fix it. That's when I decided to take it even further. See, I hadn't just been paying for their lifestyles. I'd been documenting it. Every Venmo transfer, every bank statement, every email, I had a paper trail. Not because I planned to use it, at least not until now. So I put it together. A Google Drive folder neatly sorted. Rent payments, Mom. Childcare, Claire. Credit transfers, Jeff. Party expenses. Breakdown unpaid loans. Then I shared the folder with the entire extended family, aunts, cousins, even my grandmother. With it, I wrote a simple message. I'm stepping away from the family for a while. I don't want apologies. I want accountability. If you ever wondered why I seem distant or tired or disconnected, it's because I've spent years being laughed at by the people I was quietly saving. I'm done. I wish you all well. That's it. No drama, no insults, just truth. The fallout was nuclear. Some of my cousins reached out immediately, shocked, horrified, apologetic. One of them said, "I thought you were just the quiet one. I had no idea you were the one holding everything together," but from Mom, nothing. Radio silence for 3 days. Then a text, "I hope you're happy. The family's falling apart." I stared at it for a long time. Then I wrote back, "Maybe it needed to." And I left it at that because this wasn't revenge. Not really. It was release. A slow, calculated dismantling of the pedestal they built on my back. But I wasn't done yet because I just received an invitation, one they assumed I'd ignore. A new family dinner hosted by Jeff, labeled a fresh start. I didn't respond right away to Jeff's invitation. The advice sat in my inbox for 2 full days, blinking unread like a dare. Titled Family Reset Dinner, Jeff's Place, Sunday, 6 p.m. The message beneath was short, almost suspiciously so. Let's clear the air and start over. No drama, just family. It didn't mention the birthday disaster, didn't reference the folder, didn't include an apology or even my name, just family. Still, I, RSVP. Yes. Not because I wanted closure. I'd already made peace with stepping back, but something told me this wasn't a dinner. It was a performance, and I wanted a front row seat. Or more accurately, I wanted to bring my own spotlight. Sunday came, and I dressed in dark jeans and a button-up. Nothing flashy, but clean, crisp, composed. I arrived exactly at 6 p.m. Not early, not late. Just on time enough to let them know I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. Jeff's house was already crowded. I recognized most of the faces, extended cousins, family friends, the ones who floated around during holidays, always orbiting the real power players. Mom, Jeff, Claire. They were clustered in the living room, drinks in hand, pretending to laugh at jokes, while glancing sideways to see who was speaking. When I stepped in, a few people turned and froze. Others gave that awkward half-smile, reserved for people you've heard about, but haven't spoken to yet. Claire was by the kitchen island pouring herself a drink. She looked up, surprised. "You actually came," she said flatly. I nodded. "You invited me?" She huffed a small laugh. "Yeah, I just didn't think you'd show your face." "You mean after being called the family wallet and having my entire existence mocked at a party I paid for?" Her eyes narrowed. It was a joke. "Then why didn't anyone laugh until I left?" She didn't answer, just sipped her drink and turned away. I made my way through the house slowly, like I was just another guest. I said hi to a few people who greeted me with tentative smiles, but mostly I watched. Jeff was playing host now, clapping backs, refilling glasses, trying to control the energy of the room like a cheap game show host. At 6:20, Mom arrived. Her entrance was calculated as always. Designer scarf, oversized sunglasses, despite the sun setting, a soft-lipped smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She walked straight past me, offering a cool nod that landed somewhere between hello and "you ruined my birthday." No hug, no words. Dinner was announced shortly after. Long table buffet style, with everyone seated tight to accommodate the crowd. I took a seat toward the middle, visible but not central. Jeff stood at the head. Before we eat, he began lifting his glass. "I just want to say thank you to everyone who came. It's been a rough couple of weeks, but I think we can all agree family is family, and no matter what's happened, we're stronger together." A few scattered claps, some polite nods. Claire smirked. Then Jeff added, "And I think we all owe Adam an apology for how things went down." The room quieted. My heart thudded, but not from emotion, from suspicion. "Adam," Jeff continued, "I know the party didn't go the way you hoped, but we've all had time to reflect, and I think we're ready to move forward, right?" He looked at me. Everyone looked at me. I glanced down the table. My mother was picking Lynn off her napkin. Claire was scrolling her phone beneath the tablecloth. I waited, counted to 5 in my head. "Do you really want to move forward?" I asked calmly. "Or do you just want the bank back open?" Jeff blinked. "That's not fair." "No." I turned to the room. "Because for the last 6 years I've covered rent bills, daycare parties, trips, and debts. I've been told to stop making scenes, to be grateful I'm even included. And when I finally said no, when I stepped away, you threw a party about it and then called me dramatic." No one spoke. I stood up, slowly reaching into my coat. From the inside pocket, I pulled out a small envelope and placed it gently in the center of the table. Everyone watched. "It's not money," I said. "It's the deed to Mom's condo." Her head snapped up. "I bought it outright 2 years ago. Had the title transferred into a trust. It's been under my name ever since." Claire's glass froze midair. "Don't worry," I said to Mom. "You can stay there. I've signed it over to you effective immediately. You won't owe me anything ever again." I turned to Jeff. "Your credit cards, I've canceled every authorized user slot with my name on them. You'll have to make your own payments now." He opened his mouth, but I wasn't done. "And Claire?" I said, voice steady. "Your son's daycare. I prepaid the next 2 months. After that, it's on you." I looked at each of them. I didn't come here to fight. I came to return everything. "You say you want a fresh start? Good. Here it is." I could feel the table shift like gravity had changed. Mom looked pale. Jeff was visibly sweating. Claire's jaw had gone tight like she was holding back a retort she didn't quite have the words for. And still, no one apologized. Not really. They didn't ask why I did it or how it had gotten this far. They just sat there stunned, processing the new terms of engagement, like chess players realizing they'd lost a queen 3 moves ago. I slid my chair back. "I hope you enjoy dinner," I said. "It'll probably taste better now that you paid for it yourselves." And with that, I walked out. But I didn't leave town because one person hadn't reached out through all this. Someone I hadn't heard from in years. Someone who used to call me her favorite, my cousin Madison. The only one who disappeared when things got bad. But last week she texted me, and her message was only 5 words long. They did it to me too. Madison's message hit me like a quiet echo of my own story. I hadn't seen her since my late 20s, maybe a few awkward holidays after that, but she used to be the only one at family gatherings who'd sit beside me when no one else did. She was a few years younger, but sharp, observant, too smart to stay around. I never knew why she'd vanished. Just chalked it up to her moving out of state for school, then job stuff, maybe life getting in the way. Turns out I wasn't entirely wrong, but I hadn't known the whole story. I texted her back that night. "Let's talk." She responded immediately. We met at a small cafe downtown the next morning. She was already there when I arrived, sitting with a tea in front of her notebook open, like she'd been waiting for this conversation for a long time. She stood and hugged me. Not the kind of hug people give out of obligation, but the kind that says finally. We sat, ordered coffee, and before I could even ask, she opened her notebook and started flipping through. "I've been keeping track," she said. "Not for revenge, just for clarity," and she showed me everything. It turned out Madison had been in a very similar position to mine, except younger and far more exploited emotionally. When she landed a tech internship out of college, she'd moved back in with Aunt Karen, who of course charged her rent. Not market rent, double market rent. Karen claimed it was teaching her responsibility, but Madison also paid for her cousin's school supplies, groceries for the house, and even helped Aunt Karen start a failing Etsy business that never took off. And when Madison finally got her own place, the family ghosted her. Birthday invitations stopped coming. Group chats she was once part of mysteriously vanished. She'd been written off as selfish because she stopped being useful. She hadn't talked to Claire in years. Jeff had once hit her up for money, and when she said no, he replied with just 3 words. Wow. Cold-blooded. I was stunned but not surprised. I told her everything about the party, the cake, the venue, the folder I'd send out, the final confrontation at the dinner. Madison laughed when I mentioned the deed to Mom's condo. "You always were too generous," she said. "But I'm glad you stopped." We talked for 2 hours, and by the end of it, we agreed on one thing. We weren't going to wait around anymore for apologies that were never coming. So we made a plan. Not for vengeance, for peace. We decided to reclaim the word family. Not the version we'd been sold growing up. The guilt-tripping, money-leeching, hierarchy-driven power play that masqueraded as love, but the real kind. The kind we could build, chosen, earned. Together, we started small. Sunday dinners, just the 2 of us at first. Then we invited a few others' cousins who'd quietly reached out after I sent the folder. People who had felt the cold shoulder of our family's favoritism and entitlement. One of Jeff's older daughters, who had moved out at 18 and hadn't spoken to him in years, showed up one night with drinks and a story that made my jaw drop. Little by little, we formed a new circle, one built not on guilt or obligation, but mutual respect. No one asked for money, no one made jabs. It was peaceful, warm, but things weren't as quiet on the other side. I started hearing through mutual acquaintances that the original family circle wasn't handling the fallout well. Jeff had his credit cards closed. Apparently, he hadn't realized how bad his debt was without someone patching the holes. Collection notices started piling up. He sold his car 6 months later. Last I heard, he moved back in with a friend from high school. Claire tried launching a maneuver podcast. It never took off. Without the daycare covered, she had to reduce her hours at work, and eventually she started borrowing money from a new boyfriend until he found out and dumped her. She moved back in with Mom shortly after. And Mom, she tried to save face for a while through a couple small gatherings, told everyone she'd canceled the birthday party on purpose. But the story didn't hold. Too many people knew, and once the folder had made its rounds, people started quietly stepping away. The truth had a way of sticking. Eventually, she sent me a letter handwritten short. I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I see it now. I won't ask you to forgive me, but I am sorry for everything. It was the closest thing to a real apology I'd ever gotten from her. I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because it didn't need a reply. I'd already moved on. She wasn't asking for anything, just acknowledging what had happened. That was enough. For once, it's been a year now. My Sundays are spent cooking, laughing, playing board games with people who see me not for what I give, but for who I am. Madison and I are closer than ever. She recently got engaged and asked me to officiate. I said yes without hesitation. The original group, the ones who toasted to the child who gives the most but matters the least, they don't call anymore. Don't write. The silence, once bitter, now feels like a blessing. And that cake, the one I sat down at the party and left behind, I went back to that bakery a few weeks later. Ordered the exact same one. 2 tiers vanilla bean raspberry filling sugar flowers. This time, I brought it to our new family dinner. We sang, we laughed, we made a toast. To the people who matter and the peace we built ourselves. And as I watched everyone dig in, I realized I hadn't lost a family that night. Sometimes I still think about what happened. Not with anger anymore, not even with sadness. Mostly with gratitude. At the time, I thought I was losing my family. I thought I was watching everything I had spent years building collapse in a single evening. What I didn't realize was that I was finally being set free. Back then, I believed love was something you earned by sacrificing enough. If I paid enough bills, covered enough emergencies, showed up enough times, maybe one day my family would see me the way I wanted to be seen. Maybe they would appreciate me. Maybe they would love me. Instead, every dollar I gave seemed to make me less visible. Every favor became an expectation. Every act of generosity became an obligation. I spent years shrinking my own life to make theirs easier. I rented apartments I didn't love because I was helping pay someone else's rent. I skipped vacations because someone else always needed money. I postponed my own plans because somebody in the family always had another crisis that somehow became my responsibility. And the worst part wasn't the money. It was the way they looked at me, like I existed solely to solve problems, like I was a resource instead of a person. The night of the birthday party was simply the first time they said it out loud. The family wallet, the child who gives the most but matters the least. Looking back now, I realize those jokes didn't come from nowhere. They were speaking the truth they had all quietly accepted for years. I just happened to hear it. These days, my life looks very different. I own a small house with a big dining room table that somehow always seems to be full. Every Sunday, people gather there. Madison is usually the first to arrive and the last to leave. Her husband helps me with the grill. The cousins who chose honesty over family politics bring desserts and stories. Friends come by, neighbors stop in. Sometimes there are so many people that we run out of chairs and end up sitting on folding stools or the living room floor. Nobody complains, nobody keeps score, nobody asks me for money. We simply enjoy each other's company. The first few years felt strange. I kept waiting for the catch. I kept expecting someone to need something. Old habits die hard. But slowly I learned what healthy relationships actually look like. People call because they want to talk, not because they need a loan. They invite me because they enjoy my company, not because they're hoping I'll pay the bill. They ask how I'm doing and actually listen to the answer. For a long time, I didn't realize how rare that felt. A few years ago, my mother sent me a letter. Later, Claire sent one too. They apologized in their own ways. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just honestly. I never fully repaired those relationships, but I stopped carrying the resentment. That burden was too heavy, and it belonged to the past anyway. When my mother passed away, I stood by her grave and realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was simply finished with that chapter of my life. Sometimes people ask whether I regret what happened, whether I regret walking out of that party, whether I regret cutting everyone off. My answer is always the same: no. Because that night forced me to face a truth I had been avoiding for years. I deserved better, not because I was perfect, not because I had given so much, simply because every person deserves relationships built on respect instead of obligation. If I had stayed, nothing would have changed. I would still be writing checks, still chasing approval, still hoping people would eventually value me. Instead, I learned something far more important. The people who truly care about you don't measure your worth by what you provide. They don't keep a ledger. They don't treat kindness like a transaction. They simply love you for who you are. Tonight, as I sit at my dining room table listening to laughter drift in from the kitchen, I look around at the people filling my home and realize how wrong I was all those years ago. I thought I lost my family at my mother's birthday party. The truth is, that was the night I finally found one.